I better turn this off.
Welcome, welcome everyone. Thanks for the music, I love it.
1 second now.
No problem.
Why is it not showing me my camera?
There we go. Perfect. Great to see you all.
Good evening.
Good evening, good evening. I'm sure we'll have Mark and Crystal on very shortly. Just welcome to all the attendees that are coming in. I don't know, I should have had champagne or some bubbles or something, I don't know what.
I know, you should have. We have some sparkling water.
I know,
There you go.
I
I brought my own outstanding Guinness, right?
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Cheers, Pete. Happy
Cheers,
anniversary
Yes,
or happy
happy
birthday,
anniversary.
whatever. Thank you very much. It's yeah, we don't do anything too loud. I've literally just managed to get the kids to sleep, so yeah, it's quiet and silence in the house is what it's all about.
It is. We have Ashton. Ashton is in the other room. It's not quite time for his bed. So yeah, in about 10 minutes, it is his time for bed. But yeah, we'll see how he gets on. We might have a visitor halfway through. We'll see.
It is amazing how many points a child can come up with when it comes to bedtime. That, you know, there's an expression, you know, there's no one busier than a child going to bed.
Yeah, I need food is normally the one that comes up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our 4-year-old there, she will be thirsty. She wants an apple. It has to be. You have to ask whether it is to be peeled or not peeled. There's 50 ways, and if you do any one of the steps wrong, you have to start all over again.
Yeah.
So oh dear, but sure, it's great fun. It is great fun. So just giving the guys a few minutes to jump on. That's okay. Welcome everyone. It's lovely to see everyone. If there's anyone who would like to ask any questions or whatever, feel free to put it in the chat or the questions, and I'll do my best to multitask. I think managing and keeping everyone in check is going to be fun. So that's the first thing. It's great to see that. Perfect. Sorry. Awesome.
Great music. Oh, did you hear my music? Was my music on when you actually turned on? So it was. Yeah.
It was when you were having the conversation
Sharon
about us, you didn't think we were on camera.
Yeah, I had my AC/DC on in the background, right? Thunderstruck.
Bit of thunderstruck, yeah. That's the way to go.
Yeah.
So now it's what we'll do is we'll give the guys a couple of minutes. That's
Mark is coming in here now. Hi, Mark. Hi, Crystal.
Hi.
Hey,
Hey, how are you doing?
Mighty Pete.
And Pete.
How are we all?
Good.
Great to see you guys.
Good to
Awesome.
see you and hear that great accent, or our accent.
There's the book.
I got it here.
We'll match
love
you.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah. And I've even marked my favorite quotation,
Which is?
Oh,
which is a Chinese proverb, which says, "He who asks a question is a fool for 5 minutes. He who
yeah.
does not ask a question remains a fool forever."
I love that one. Isn't it?
Love that one.
You know a lot of those people in the second quadrant.
Oh,
That's for sure.
Listen, first of all, we'll just kick straight off. I want to thank you all. I want to thank obviously yourself, Mark and Crystal, for coming on, Pat and Donna. Listen, it's absolutely awesome to be here and have you all together. So thank you for that. And it's a pleasure to be here celebrating with you. So thank you. That's the first thing.
Our pleasure,
On your
Mighty Pete.
100th episode, Pete.
Yeah, it's I don't quite know where the time's gone. It's kind of flown through, gone thick and fast. But yeah, it's awesome, you know. And obviously, it's great to have you all back. So thank you for that.
We've been asked back, so that's always good.
It's always a good start. Yeah, you get the repeat invitation. So that was going to actually be my first question. Is you know, what do you do to celebrate wins, each one of you? So even if we start off there with Mark and Crystal.
Wow. I get to go first. Okay. What do you do to celebrate wins? Okay, great question. I think it's for us, I acknowledging the moment, because in this world that we live in, it's so easy to move past it to the next goal. And for the two of us, we've realized that we need to take that moment and celebrate and acknowledge, not just acknowledge the accomplishment, but acknowledge every single thing that went into it, right? Because there's always, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears usually for any major accomplishment. So I think for me, that's the biggest thing.
And the expanded acknowledgement would be the acknowledgement of all the people that have helped. Like you guys were kind enough to, starting with Pat and Donna long ago, and then they introduced us to you. And so we're deeply thankful to that. And then what you don't know is we've done 80 plus podcasts, maybe 90 by now around the world. And our book is one of the 4 bestsellers, and it's amazing because we're selling well everywhere in Europe, thanks to you guys. And we're just going, yay. So that, and then I think you got to have a celebration, and no one in Ireland could go without a good drink, right?
Well, you've been to the Guinness Storehouse, Mark, so you know.
Right. Yes. And for us, it's a great bottle of wine, which we participated in this amazing virtual wine tasting just last night that was really fabulous.
Brilliant.
What's your go-to in the wines? You got to hit us with it. What's your pleasure?
Well, what was the name of the new vineyard that we saw?
Jessup
Wines. And I'm telling you, we love a Rombauer Chardonnay. I don't know if you guys have ever had a Rombauer. It's our favorite Chardonnay, but this Jessup winery has created a Chardonnay that rivals a Rombauer. In fact, I think I like it better. It's so fabulous.
You need to know this as a marketing celebration, though, because what happens is the guy who owns C-Suite podcasting is a lovely guy named Jeffrey Hazlett. He gave me the Salesman of the Year award when he was head of sales marketing executives at one time and doing $18 billion worth of marketing dollars for Kodak back when Kodak was booming. And he calls me up and he says, hey, would you like to be on here with the best of the best business people? Everybody will be a billionaire except you. And, then you got to pay $200 to come in to get the wine sent to your house to do this virtual thing. So I thought, wow, what a great marketing tool. He's having it. We're paying our own way, but we got to meet all these fabulous people. I mean, it was limited to 10 or 20 people,
Right.
But everybody got to introduce themselves, and it was really 3 different kinds of wine. So it was a celebration worthy of the night. And I recommend you could probably do that with Guinness for all I know. They'd send it to somebody in time for it.
I do like wine, and I've done a wine appreciation course similar to that with a client of mine, and we were thinking about what could we do, so we decided to do a wine and cheese tasting evening, and like that we sold the tickets for 50 quid a ticket, right? And we had 100 people in the room. But the real win was at the end of the night when he was taking 1,000 bucks orders at a time, right? So we probably sold about 50 grand worth of wine that night for him, because again there were gifts, people walking out the door with gifts. It was coming close to Christmas, and so it was a big win, but it was an exceptional evening. It was fantastic. So
Was that live, Pat? Was that a
that was live. Yeah, it was in the room. So we tasted their wines. Of course, they brought in some of their wines, exclusive wines, and then we had a guy from Sheridan Cheese, which is an Irish cheese company, and so we were doing the wine and cheese, and with a guy called Paolo Tullio. I don't know if you've come across Paolo Tullio. He's a wine critic and food critic, and very well renowned in Europe. So he was there to talk about it as well. So it was good fun. It was good fun, but it was a great way to actually get it out. Now we're doing the typical Irish thing, right? We're talking about drink. But see how easy it is to get
angelic up here.
How easy it is to get that conversation going, right? But yeah, but I do. I enjoy wine. I enjoy wine.
Good read.
Well, while you're talking, Pat, then what's your method for celebrating?
I take this
Wine.
beautiful lady out, I take this beautiful lady out for dinner, right? Or but I think we celebrate in many different ways. Sometimes, Pete, actually genuine, for me is when I recognize a win or something that makes me feel really good. I take time out for something like this. I take time out to read a book, to sit down, take it in, absorb it for me, and learn a little bit more. And then there are times both Don and I will just we just go somewhere really nice. We'll go to, it's not about being extravagant, right? It's, but we will find the best 5-star hotels and we just go for coffee, right? And have a silver service and feel relaxed, and we, get served. And sometimes I just put on my AC/DC Thunderstruck and I jump around the room, right? It just, whatever the moment feels like, right? We just do it. So,
Right.
We've got to put
Just-
this into context for you, Mark and Crystal. Is before you came on there, I think Pat was caught with AC/DC Thunderstruck booming in the
Oh,
background.
I absolutely was, yeah. It's there you go. So I had this on was I was waiting, and I was chilling. The next thing I realized, oh, we're on.
I'll get
So-
warmed up.
So
Yeah.
Pete, what is your best way to celebrate?
It's, it's changed so much, but actually, and it's a weird thing that going through all these interviews has changed me. I celebrate more so internally now, to be quite honest. It just in terms of just mindset and gratitude, and like I say, when you've got 3 babies in the house, you can't keep the music levels down. But it's hearing so many people's stories and successes and what they've gone through, and that it actually, I found it sort of made me quite humble. That's the one thing I've found, real sort of empathy and real change for me, to be honest. And I'm sure it's obviously the same for yourself. And well, I suppose Donna as well. I mean, if we come to you in terms of how you celebrate, and then if you'd even take us on, because you're obviously aware of a lot of stories as well.
Well, I think I'd echo everything everybody else has said. Gratitude is a huge one. For me, sometimes if I have a goal, if it's an intentional goal that I set, I say to myself, when I achieve that, this is what I'm going to have, or this is what I'm going to get myself. If we're doing something that involves a lot of activity or a lot of hard work or brain work, it's back to something very, very simple. And believe it or not, it could be Pat and I having a glass of wine in our living room. It could be something as simple as that, where you're kind of taking yourself out of the adrenaline side. And then it's just acknowledging, as Crystal said, acknowledging and savoring that moment of, I did it. I feel really good. Who did how did I impact? And definitely when it comes to events or work related stuff, when we start to get like messages or an email, and it could be the day of, or it could be, a month later, or 2 months, or a year, or whatever, and you get a message, so your book really helped, or your event really helped, or something like that. It's kind of almost like that's an additional win, or I don't know, maybe it doesn't do anything for anybody else, but for me, it's, it's lovely to hear that. And it adds to, I guess it adds to your why. It adds to, I've achieved this. I feel proud of myself. But as Mark said, it's bringing everybody together. So it's a mixture really of the intentional, of the adrenaline side, and also then of the relaxation or humble side, as you would say, Pete.
No, absolutely. And it's, Mark and Crystal, how have you found it? Obviously, being in touch with so many people and through the years, I'm sure that the ripples in the pond must be quite significant for you now.
Here, let me just give you one. I think we celebrate every minute of every day, but we are big on exercise, as 6 days a week, and we are members of a great club. When you guys come here, we'll take you to the village.
Yeah.
It's got everything, and it's the most wonderful people. So I'm walking out of the club yesterday early in the morning, like 6:30 or 7, having felt really good and talking to the manager, and all of a sudden this guy comes up to me and goes, "I know you. You're Mark." I don't know where this conversation is going to go. I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I heard you in 2003 and you changed my life." And I go, "Well, it's not as bad as I thought." I didn't know where he was going to go. Anyhow, it was so good. I said, "Can I videotape you?" And this guy said, he was doing okay with MCI, which is a big telephone company here. And then all of a sudden he heard me, and now he's made millions of dollars, gone on to do wonders. And I, I'm all sweaty, and I'm just videotaping this guy standing up while people were walking by. And it was sort of a mind blower, and it was really, it just elevated me, because the point is that you've been to my seminar, so you know that there's cause, effect, and total result. You can't know the total result of all of us in the speaking and all of us in the podcasting business now. You cannot know who you're affecting and how, because whether you got 10 people in the audience or 10,000, you don't know. And same with podcasts, you don't know who's listening. And it's a wonderful echo effect and a feedback loop that comes back to you. And The minute I got home and I was celebrating, jumping up and down, and told Crystal, "You're gonna watch this. You're not even gonna believe what just happened." This guy came up, his whole life got turned around, and I didn't even know him.
Well, the funny thing about that, I want to say, is it happens hundreds, if not thousands of times, you know, especially with Mark having sold so many books with Chicken Soup for the Soul and having, you know, reached so many people. But that's the amazing thing about it. Sort of like what Donna was saying, each person, that one person every time that acknowledges, you know what, you changed my life. You feel it deeply. You feel it really deeply. I mean, we've gotten a couple letters in the past few days. I mean, we've been getting hundreds of letters for the book and for podcasting. And just, you know, when someone says, I read your book, I laughed, I cried, I was going through a transition, and this is the book that helped me through it. And I feel like I'm ready for the rest of my life now. And you just think that made all the difference to that one person. So, you know, it's like, you might have thousands of those, but each one is so special.
Absolutely. No, listen, thank you for sharing that. And you know, I can only imagine, you know, how powerful that is as well. What about you for yourself, Pat, in terms of, you know, feedback and awareness of your effect on the world?
Oh gosh. I mean, there are so many stories that I'm so, you know, thankful for, proud of. I mean, things that seemed impossible. You know, people that have lived with depression their entire lives through my coaching and hypnotherapy work, you know, didn't think there was any hope. And, you know, there's one woman I'm thinking of in particular, her name's Kathy, and she came to me, she heard me on the radio, and she was one of my worst cases. She grew up being very abused through the depression. Her mother, she had memories of her mother taking her by the foot and swinging her around and releasing her into the refrigerator as a little girl, 4-year-old. And then the next memory she had was her mother left the family for good when she was 8 years old. The dad, a few weeks later, packed up the 3 children, Kathy and her 2 sisters, and took them to the relatives and said, I can't deal with these kids. You have to take them, and just dumped the kids. So her sense of worthlessness was just so profound. She woke up every day feeling like she wanted to die. She's like, I just feel like I don't deserve to be here. I just want to die. And even though she'd had some success in the insurance industry, she was in insurance, she still felt this huge sense of worthlessness, pervasive worthlessness. And she'd been to psychological counseling for years. She said, I heard you on the radio and you're my last hope. Can you please work with me? So she came for 5 appointments. We did, you know, emotional freedom technique. I did a lot of coaching intake and understanding her. We started releasing some of those structures that really held her prisoner in her own mind to these feelings of unworthiness. And then I received this email from her after 5 appointments. And she said, I just need to acknowledge you. I am so thankful that you came into my life that day. I can honestly say I am finally free of the crushing depression I've experienced my entire life. She said, now I can just wake up and I can have a bad day, and it's just a bad day, but it no longer controls me and shuts me down. And she said, I'll thank God forever for you. And so that is so rewarding to me. It's so rewarding that she's finished, that she's healed in 5 sessions, that I don't, you know, she doesn't have to go to psychological counseling for the rest of her life. It's just such a beautiful thing to be able to help someone find that part of themselves that is that new, shiny, free part that they can just go out and express themselves in the world and be all that they were meant to be.
That's beautiful. No, thank you for sharing that. What about for you, Pat?
Well, I believe I know that it's everything, actually. That's why we do what we do, right? You know, and I've often shared this, and I think I shared this even one of your podcasts, Pete, where for me, I just believe we're blessed. Mark said something earlier when, you know, we speak on stage or you're doing this podcast, you don't know who's watching, and you're inspiring people far beyond your reach that you will never get to meet. But we're in an industry where we've been blessed and we have gotten to meet some of those people. And when they do come to you and you get that feedback, and, you know, just like Chris has said, it, you know, we'll get messages of people thanking us, and it's a win every time, actually. Then, you know, it's a win every time, and that's what drives us to keep doing what we do. That's the real reward at the end of every day. You know, to be able to sit back and say, I know today I've made a difference in somebody's life. I know I've contributed in a positive way, and I've made somebody's life that little bit better, so that it allowed them to believe in themselves, create a little bit of change, to do something. And you know, this is ironic, right? But because we talk about the beliefs and changing people's beliefs, because to me that's what it's about, and getting people to think and ask things differently. But something that Mark and Crystal don't know, I'm gonna share it, because
I bet they do know.
Right? Well, you see, this
Have
is a
to
book,
know.
right? That it's going to be published and released on November 5th. And actually, Pete and myself and Donna are actually authors in this book as well, right? So, you know, it's a collaboration of stories, and it's a, you know, be life or belief. And you know, you can see and this was with Donna when she spoke about the lie in the belief. You know, what lies you're telling yourselves. And when you get the opportunity, because it's an opportunity that has been presented to us, and I'm going to share a funny story with you in a moment about this, and let's see if we can jog Mark's memory a little bit. All right, because when you get the opportunity to change people's lives, you have a moral obligation to change people's lives. And the reason I'm going to jog Mark's memory, because this is when he had the conversation. He told me, Pat, it's no longer yours, right? This is when I say when Mark Victor Hansen juiced me, right? And I say juiced me because he squared about 35 kilos out, right? And you know, but you know, the funny thing is, I was having a conversation with somebody, with a mutual friend, Mark, just this week, a guy from Texas called Scott Chilling.
Yeah.
And myself and Scott were having a conversation. He said, Pat, he said, listen, I'm going to tell you about a conversation that changed my life. He said, I met these guys. I don't know if you ever heard of them. I said, go on, try me. And he said, I met Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield. I remember Mark saying to me, when you have this knowledge, this information, it's no longer yours. And I said, I think I recollect this conversation that myself and Mark Victor Hansen had on August 22nd, 2009 in Dublin, right? Because that's the day those photographs were taken. And we had that conversation, both you and I privately. And we're talking about, you know, having that ability and the opportunity to contribute to people's lives in a positive way. And when you get that opportunity, it's no longer yours, right? It's no longer, we don't own this anymore. This is what we're here to do. This is part of our life. This is what we're here to serve and to share this knowledge and share this information. And that's, I think, why we do what we do. And you know, I have a very, very strong memory of that conversation. And it was so funny last week when Scott came back. Yeah, I've often shared this, and I share this on stage, and I share this with people too, because I want to relay that message that you shared with me back then. That is, you know, even if I share a message on stage, it's no longer mine. And it's no longer the audience's either. They have a moral obligation to share this message, right? And then there's multiple wins. There's multiple wins, and everybody wins. And you know, so for me, I think, Pete, you know, to see it every day is certainly a driving force. It's, you know, to the point where, you know, and you know this, I do this now because I love doing what I do, and I'm extremely passionate about it. And I do this in ways I have expectations, but in other ways I don't. But I'm doing it without having to prove anything. I absolutely accept that this is the way, and there's no proof needed. And you know, and that for me is the freedom to be true, if that makes sense. And I believe that's what this industry, that's what these books, I mean, we're just talking, people think about these books. It's not just about the books, it's about the knowledge that is shared in those books, and it's the information that's being shared that is no longer ours. It's just another way of getting that message out there to people, for them to take complete ownership themselves. And we're blessed that we do get that feedback, right? Yes. You know, we're blessed to get it back, you know.
Well, I remember I think the best or the most rewarding feedback I've ever got, and this may sound a bit bizarre, because you know, you have your attendee feedback or your readers feedback, or Crystal, as you said, like somebody on the radio or your clients, but it was somebody actually contacted me maybe 2 years ago, and they said to me that their daughter was in a bad way. She was 12, but they said to me that she hadn't smiled in a year. But she had different issues anyway, but she hadn't smiled in a year. So she said, can I bring her along to one of your seminars? So our seminars, although there's not anything major content, they're not really for kids. So I explained to her, I knew what I was going to talk about, and there's a bit of my story in it. So I knew that it's not necessarily for a 12-year-old. But I told her, look, if you want to bring her along, this is the content, and I'll make it up to you to, you're her mother, you can make that decision. Anyway, she brought her along, and she came, and she was all excited, and, she kind of giddy about everything. And that was fine. She really enjoyed the event. Off she went. Said thank you at the end of it, and the kind of the traditional thing. I really enjoyed it and all that. Anyway, about 2 months later, I just got a message on Facebook, and there was a photograph, just a photograph of her smiling, and her mum said, "That's because of you." Isn't that lovely?
Oh,
So that was quite cool. So for me, although it's for many people, it's like she's 12, but the way I look at that is that's a butterfly effect, because God knows where she would have ended up, no matter what kind of mindset she could have gone down. Now she's hopefully still gone down a really good mindset. And, if she goes on, then she has maybe a relationship, or then they may have kids or whatever. That's a butterfly effect for generations. So that's the way I look at it. If you get like one little domino, and you can create change in that, no matter how small it is, and you just flick it, like, it's never ending. And that's where, I guess, and Pat, I know you're the same, and Pete, and well, Kristen and Mark, I suppose everybody here is the same. Like, you do get that. That's why you do what you do. And sometimes you get that big reminder of it. And in that case, it was from a little person, but you get that like real, yes, this is, now I know exactly why I'm doing this. Yeah, and that's, I think for me, those moments they're precious.
That's such a beautiful story, Donna, because if you get, a young person like that can go either direction, and they can really lose everything and lose all their potential. So there's something really special about that you could light her up at such a young age, and I wish more young people would participate in, self-help and, the inspirational type of things that we teach. We have an intern right now who's a college student, and she's just remarkable. And we're so thankful to have her on board, because she is just a light, and she's taking all of the things that we're doing and then sharing them with her college peers and really making a difference, in that area. And especially right now where college kids are so confused, there's so many political issues, even on campuses, especially in the United States, but she's just a breath of fresh air. It's so wonderful.
She shared our book, her name's Zoe, and she was brought to us and said, look, I got, school's so easy for me. I'm a straight A student. I got 20 hours. I'd like to contribute to you. I'm a student of your books. So we sent her a copy, asked. She immediately sent it out to her whole sorority, every sorority sister, or a note, and said, this is the best book I've ever written. You've got to read this. It's going to change your life. And she's starting to get all that feedback. And then, I said, well, figure out what you want to do. I mean, and so she immediately wrote all the best podcasters in America, and a couple of them have already taken us back. One with 90,000 yesterday, and and she's self-initiated. I just wrote her, I said, we appreciate your self-initiative to action. I wish every kid knew this and also believed in free enterprise like you do, because they think there's a free lunch and you ought to get to go to university free and socialism's good, none of which I believe. I'm a flaming capitalist with fire in my belly, Pete.
Love it. I love it. That's actually something I wanted to get into a bit, in terms of, because obviously with Ask in the book, and I mean, even I suppose in terms of mentorship, coaching, inspiring, it is asking, probing and proving questions, if you like. But then the follow up to that, I suppose, is how do you gauge? Well, first of all, I want to ask what do you see as the difference between listening and hearing? And then how do you gauge the feedback to see that the question was correct, if that makes sense? And I don't know if I start with Mark and Crystal, if I may.
Well, first of all, what we've learned, because this is an experiment for us, is that we've said, look, everybody get a copy of Ask at Amazon, and then get your best friend or cohort to do it, or your mentor or mentee, and then get together and go through every question in the book, because we got 30 million unemployed people in America right now, and I'm sure the same in Europe. I mean, the airlines are all down and they're afraid they're going to go bankrupt, which breaks my heart, because I've loved traveling my whole life for 44 years and like the people there. And then when they're going through it, they're having this transformative experience, and they're asking each other. And what happens is that if they'll use our book as a touchstone, it works perfectly. Then number two is that we created askthebookclub.com, and anyone around the world can join free. And we're going to try to help everyone become masters at asking. So they ask themselves, ask others, and ask God. And it is really sort of like an ever unfolding lotus for us, the way this thing is working. It's just, we thought we were done when we did the book, but suddenly it had so many wonderful ramifications or edifications or evolutions. How's that?
Yeah. Well, and I just wanted to add to that, Pete, we say the three channels through which to ask are ask yourself, ask others, and ask God. And asking others, is that part where we bond with other human beings. And in so many ways, we become, while we're connected through social media, we become so disconnected at a real heart and soul level. And so our vision for this book is to really bring people back together and open up that childlike curiosity again of wondering about people, wanting to know, someone you pass by or some experience or some opportunity. We're not curious enough about opportunities, about each other and all of those things. And when we become more curious, we start to learn about one another. You might be passing by the most amazing partner that you could ever have. But if you're not curious about people, if you aren't willing to give them the time of day and start asking about each other and asking questions, we'll miss tremendous opportunities. And so that's part of the mission of the book, is to really get people to bond and come together and be more curious together and be one another's greatest resource. Because, there's a section in the book that is called Become a Granter of Wishes, because for everyone that asks, there's someone who gets to answer. And that is also another beautiful part of the experience. I mean, how great does it feel when you're able to help someone with something, whether it's just being a listening ear or giving someone a little bit of advice, or sharing your insight or your experience in a thing, and just getting people to the point where we're comfortable asking, where we can get over those roadblocks we talk about in the book, the 7 roadblocks to asking. We all need to get over those: the unworthiness, the fear, the pattern paralysis, where we're just stuck in our own patterns that aren't working, and just step out of that and start asking and being a resource to one another.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you. And what about yourself, Donna?
Can you just repeat the question? Is it about listening and hearing? I know the asking aspect of it.
Yeah, so there's two parts for us. Was listening and hearing is the key part, because I suppose being an effective asker, but then the second part how you can be do you listen or do you hear, and what's the difference?
Well, I think when you listen, you just hear the words, and then when you hear is when, I think, Pat, you've a great, do you listen to respond, or do you just listen? And I think when you have that pause, I think it's within that pause, and like Chris, it may be a case of asking and hearing at the same time. It's deeper than that. It's deeper than just hearing the words. There's something extra energetically. Personally, I feel that if you say something to me, it depends on how you say it. It depends on why you're saying it. And it depends on what you're looking for. And, it could be a case of you're asking me something as well, and I have to be prepared to open my heart to that, not just my ears. And I think people are so used to saying something and automatically somebody will respond, where it's very unusual for people just to listen. And I think sometimes silence, it's within that pause, within that gap. I think that's where it is the difference between hearing and listening. For me, anyway, that's what's when I'm listening to people.
That would make a lot of sense, because I'm not qualified to interview per se, but I've found, just in terms of giving people the space, it's an unintended and unexpected consequence that people are saying it's an incredibly cathartic and not unusual process, but they've maybe never had the chance to speak without judgment, positively and just talk, without being.
And sometimes it's the case where they actually, in that silence or in that space, it's like a gap for something that necessarily needs to happen in that space. And that may be a case of by putting their voice out there and you give them that gap, their brain doesn't get confused by what's at them. The brain kind of starts asking themselves questions, and sometimes people have the answers already themselves. That silence that allows them to develop, and it's that silence that allows them to hear those answers, where ordinarily they might not, because if they said something to somebody else, they're automatically in there with the response. So I think for me personally, that's what the difference is.
That's very powerful. Thank you. What about yourself, Pat?
Pass. I'm only joking. But you see, actually, this is a question we could probably, I think, between a whole lot of us here, we could do a 2.5 hour, 3 hour workshop on, right? Because there's so much.
Idea.
Yeah, there's an idea, right? But because there's so much involved in actively listening and actively hearing, I guess, and I think it encompasses everything that the ladies have just said, because for me, the art of listening and hearing what people are looking for comes from the powerful question as well, because for me, it's about asking the right questions and allowing people that time to hear the answer within themselves, and like, we know, because we do this and we've been doing this for a long time, what we do for a living, and we know how we work with people. But we have seen people who jump in, ask a question, and are ready to answer the question before they allow the person to hear it for themselves, right? Instead of allowing them to learn and be part of that journey. And I think that's, for me, what real listening is it's allowing a person to hear the answer within themselves. It's not about how I hear it, it's about how the person hears it. Even if they ask a question, and we'll elaborate on a question, but usually for me, I think the important thing is, and I know we're in the right room here, because even the way everybody else explained it, it's about kind of sometimes responding with a question, or in a way that it teases ownership of that question out of the individual. So that's what gives them the freedom, that's what I believe when it comes to listening and hearing. I hope that makes sense.
No, I think it does. And I suppose I'll maybe take a little step further and, sort of ask, well, when you ask a great question, but it's not heard, well, what do you think are the consequence? And sort of point that to Crystal and Mark again.
Well, I just wanted to,
Go ahead.
I don't, in response to what Pat was saying and what you just asked, that the listening and hearing and then asking more questions about it. And we talk about that in the book. It's called, those probing questions, because like Pat said, sometimes we ask something, either we already answer the question in our mind, or we're just moving on to some other random question instead of really listening to what the person is going to answer or what they're saying to us. And then, the greatest way we can acknowledge someone is by asking even a deeper probing question. And that is, based on their answer, well, tell me more about that. It's just, if I asked you something about where you grew up and you tell me where you grew up, and, and I had two brothers and a sister, and I go, oh, okay. Were you the oldest or the youngest? And did that make a difference in how you felt about your childhood? If we just listen to what someone just said, we can go a lot deeper with that person and keep asking them based on their answers, because that shows that you care. And not only shows you care, you start to create a bond with that person. So whether it's in a personal relationship or a business relationship, the research we looked at for the book, it shows that the more you're able to do that, this really actively listening and actively doing those probing questions that really are caring questions, you end up developing stronger relationships, and you're perceived to be more likable in business, more likable in relationships, and you're more likely to get a second date if you ask those questions in a dating service.
Is that right, Pat?
True story.
It obviously works. Crystal, I must have read the book. Right.
Harvard University found that, and that's quite amazing, you guys, if we just really start to polish and hone our asking skills.
In answer to your question, Pete, what flashed in my mind is, I'm a friend of Dr. Ken Blanchard, the guy who wrote 1 Minute Manager, Who Moved My Cheese with Spencer Johnson and all that. And what he said is that when people come to him, and he has a big corporation with 1,000 people, he asks them, says, this is what we want to do. And then I'm going to ask you to tell me 3 ways to do it. And then when they come back, well, here's the 3 ways to do it, Ken. And he said, no, which the best of those 3 ways? And it's really, this is why Crystal's saying probing questions, because questions the answer. And the metaphor we've been doing on these podcasts lately is because our favorite country outside of here, no offense to your country, but is Rome. And we happen to love Florence and Italy. Rome, Italy. Sorry, kid. Anyhow, and you go to Florence, and I'm sure you've been there, and you see the Michelangelo's greatest work, the David, and they say, "How you make it out?" He said, "I chip you out everything that's not David." What questions do they chip out all of our imperfections if you ask in a positive, correct, and good leadership way?
I just noticed, by the way, that Vittorio is on here. Vittorio is from Rome, right? So he's actually on here this evening. So he's probably shaking his head at you saying, Rome is not. There he is. He's just he's just commented. I know it. Italy is the best in the homemade wine. There you go.
Yes.
Yeah,
We love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually got kicked out. Was it the Vatican, or it was very funny?
No, the Sistine Chapel. Yeah, we got kicked out of the Sistine Chapel.
Pat didn't ask. He didn't ask to take photos.
I wasn't paying attention, and I was taking some pictures. But it was great, right? Because we you know what it's like. There's a huge queue going in, and there's a huge queue coming out, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we're in the kind of the holding area, if you like, after we've seen everything. And I'm taking some pictures. And next thing, the policeman taps me on the shoulder, and he goes, "You out." I'm like, what? He said, out. He said, no photographs. And I was just about to argue with him, but then I realized, hang on a moment. I said, we're finished. We don't have to join the queue. So we got a private exit. It was fantastic. So we got our tour, but yeah, it was so funny. We laughed so much afterwards. We were very grateful for the opportunity to get out early.
We were.
Yeah. It's so funny.
Yeah.
I love it. And I suppose, I mean, that is, you know, when people aren't heard, just to come back, I suppose, on that, what is the danger if you know, you're either not asking the right questions or you're not being heard? And how many questions from your truth do you think you are? And if I put that to yourself, Donna, even.
Well, I think if you don't hear somebody, it's like plugging out. It's like just plugging them out. It's like just making them dead, because they've asked you for a reason. And you never know, it could be something very personal that it's taken so much courage, and you just happen to be that tiny little lifeline, and they've built up all their courage. And you never know, you know, somebody's life. You never know what's behind their asking, what's behind their question. So for me, it's just a place of total respect. And if, you know, it's like they're giving you a gift, and it's like throwing it back in their face of just unplugging it. So yeah, you may not have the answer. You may have if you have the answer, great. If you don't have the answer, it's just that listening sometimes, and that respect and that mutual respect. And I suppose it's like holding what they say as important. And I believe that all anybody wants to feel is important. And I've often said it to Pat, you know, with events, that people are born into this world with one name. And it's our obligation. I know it's hugely difficult to remember everyone's name at an event. I mean, it's, you know, you just can't. But we intentionally try to get, and in fairness, Ron White has been a huge help there, but just to intentionally try and get something where we remember their name. And at the next event, if they come back, or if they come back to some visual context, and you say, oh, hi, Mary, or hi, Sharon, or hi, Tom. And it's almost like you've just given them all the Christmases, because like, oh, how did you remember me? I didn't even think you thought I existed, you know? So it's that importance and that respect. And it's just, I think it's, when you're in a position of influence, I think it's more important than ever to value that. And even if you don't have the answer, or even if you don't, you're not in a position to give whatever maybe that they need, just that little moment where you value whatever it is that they have to say as 100% respect. And if you don't do that, well, it's almost like just killing them. It's like just pulling the plug, as I said, which I always listen.
What about yourself, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, you see, here's what I believe in when it comes to asking like that, and paying attention to people, because, you know, sometimes, let's be openly honest, sometimes it passes by so quickly you miss it, right? Sometimes you miss it, and you just don't capture it at times. But when I think about, you know, when people come to me like that, I already believe that they've already started the asking of questions themselves first. And I think even, was it Mark, you said it a while ago, you ask ourselves, then ask others, and then ask God, right? But it has to start with yourself. And I think when people do come to you, they're digging deep. So they are asking questions. So that means they're prepared and willing to change or to move forward, or, So when somebody comes and asks you a question, again, for me, it is that digging deeper. It's why do you need the answer to this question, and what's it going to do for you? And as Donna rightly said, sometimes it's just time, and we have been there, and we've been there sometimes where we may not have the actual answer, but we'll help them through it by asking them questions, and they say, well, at least we can still give you a hug, right? So and a hug solves everything, right? And yeah, and sometimes that's all what they need. As Donna said, they need to feel that somebody cares sometimes. And it doesn't matter where you are. We all want people to care, right? Everybody wants people to care about them. And we want to feel that level of affection, or, to have that human need of significance in ways. And we meet it in different ways. So when somebody comes and if they feel unheard, I still believe that they may go away and ask a different set of questions. Because I've had people who've like that in the past who've come to me, and I was uncertain, of the question. And when asking the questions, we figured that they were a little bit uncertain in the questions, because they were probably basing it on somebody else's story, that they wanted to be like somebody else, right? So, and again, it's back to that living a life in comparison. So when they ask the questions, and sometimes you kind of ask the questions back, if it prompts a different thought for them to go in and ask a different set of questions for themselves. So you don't always have the exact answer. You can give a clever answer, a smart answer anytime, but it may not be the right answer. And the right answer may be that they feel that little bit of, okay, something has to change. I've got to go in and ask myself a different set of questions, and not leave with full of excitement, but leave maybe with a little bit of wonder of, am I asking myself the right questions? So it's very hard to measure, I believe, in terms of how that impacts and affects people. But I think we all manage it in different ways at different times. It just depends on each individual circumstance at the time, and but the truth is, and I think this is really important for people who are watching here to get this, because when we think like this, and we talk like what we're talking like here, a lot of people come forward with questions, a lot of people, and it's very difficult to manage all of that. And there's a level of you that almost could, a part of you that would feel guilty for not being able to manage that or answer that, or be led to feel it wasn't great. But I mean this respectfully, but you cannot help everybody all of the time. Sometimes, I know for me, and you know my story and my background, right? And I know for me growing up, I had to dig deep, and I had to ask the questions, because nobody in my environment had the answer. So I had to go and find it myself, and I had to find a way through, and I had to keep asking those questions. And the tough questions you got to ask of yourself first. So we can respectfully think, we can point the finger of blame and say, well, my parents didn't listen to me, or they didn't hear me, or my family, or when I reached out for help, nobody heard me. But I think we have to dig deep and find the answers ourselves. And then,
you've just actually reminded me of something. Do you remember there was an event that we did? It was only maybe about a year and a half ago. And there's this guy, you remember this guy came up to me after my talk, and he was about maybe 23, 24. And he came up and he asked me, could he have a hug? I thought, okay, fair enough. So
yeah.
And then he said, can I have another one? And I thought, okay, where is this going?
And she looked over her shoulder and went, Pat.
Okay. But there was actually, normally at events, like, you might have a queue of people waiting to talk to you because you've just come off stage. For whatever reason, I just stuck with this guy. But anyway, he told me that he was dragged, in his words, by a lady actually that we know very well. And she happened to meet him somewhere, and he was dragged to the event. And he said, before I came in this door, he said I was going to commit suicide. No, I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I think with a little bit of conversation, because I chose just to listen to him in that moment, although there were lots of other people there. It was just, it didn't take that long of a segment to listen, but he needed to be listened to. And he said, I was just always saying to myself, what's the point? What's the point in all of this? Should I just do away with myself or whatever? And when you're just saying this in this conversation, he was asking himself the wrong questions. He really was. So maybe it was when I stood up on stage and I was talking about my story. And certainly for me, I had to ask myself better questions. I have to, think differently, represent the past and make it better in the future. And I guess by doing that, he's asking himself questions as he's listening. And obviously it had, and he's alive, thankfully, he's still alive. I see him popping around on Facebook. So, but yeah, just something as simple as, what would it have been, Pat? Maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes afterwards. That was it. And then everybody came up then after, and the regular chats and everyone telling what they did and whatever. But that moment of just listening and hearing, and this is actually, it's very interesting the way the conversation is, because it's almost like a combination of listening, hearing, and asking all in one, and that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, so it goes back to perfect, Donna. And when my teacher, his daughter died at 4 years old, he felt bad because he'd been in the Harvard-Yale game, and he's ready to jump into Lake Michigan and end it all. And he came up with two questions. One is there a God? And all of a sudden this intelligence came through, that there's an a priori intelligence in the universe. A priori means before reason. In other words, you can't figure out how God flung those stars into the sky, or universal intelligence works. Then the second thing, which fits your guy, is there a reason for me to be alive? And Bucky said, yeah, humanity's comprehensive welfare and spaceship Earth. And he'd never thought about that and wrote it down, and then spent his life figuring that out. And that's, every one of us, I think, needs two things out of that. Number one, they got to have somebody validate that they're valid and that they've got a reason to live. Otherwise, and especially now when we're in a cocoon or when we're in isolation or lockdown, people are feeling, back to what Crystal said about unworthiness. And it's important that those of us that have authority, like Pat was saying, we hold up the mirror so they can look in it and say, hey, wait a second, I am important, I am. And that's what's so beautiful about what Pete does, because he is so gentle and has such a non-judgmental spirit, like he said, that everyone can bring out their who-ness and their specialness and their importance-ness.
And it's, I think, well, people will read it anyway, but in the new book, and part of my chapter, and I've said this to you the last time, but a part of my story was when it was a desperate point where I basically fell into a coma. And I realized that it wasn't a long coma, but I was in a coma. I basically starved myself intentionally, and I took it too far. But there was a point, and I put this in the book, that there was that point where I'd asked myself, and it was like literally a space of, I said, would it be easier to let go? And as I say in the book, I think in that moment, if I'd let myself, if literally saying it, I could have let myself go. And it wasn't, as I say in the book, it wasn't like an angel hovering over me or some life epiphany or anything like that. It was just a trusting, something just like, it felt like a warm feeling, not physical, but just a warm feeling came over me. And I just thought, I genuinely didn't have any energy, nothing. I just felt absolutely exhausted. It would have been easier to let go. And just something told me just to trust everything will be okay. Don't ask me where I got the strength from, but I did manage to come around. But that little just trusting, and I do believe that is that source, or whatever you want to call it, God or whatever. There is that thing inside of us, and lots of people have different names for it, but I think that trusting is part of that. And I think we all have that in our intelligence. Some recognize it as ourselves. We say, well, it's just all about me. Some people may recognize it as a formal God, and some people just see it as a universal energy. But whatever way, everybody knows what that thing is. I think there's the trusting that conversation. It's just, there's a point, and it's a very insignificant and very important part, is that if you ask and you listen, then you have to have that moment of trust. And there's a vulnerability in that. And I think it's within that vulnerability the change can occur. But I think also within that vulnerability is where people panic, and that's what keeps them stuck. So it's, it's such a tiny, precious little gap that if you can access that, it changes everything.
Boy, is that true. And don't you think, Donna, I love what you're saying, that to the extent that people can trust more, that they can surrender to what is unseen, because, you know, we can't see electricity, right? We can't even really perceive how it works exactly, but it works. But there's so much in the universe that we can't possibly perceive or understand or witness with our eyes. But the more you can surrender to that wonder, you know, this magnificent creation that is our universe, and realize that you're a part of that creation and you're a beautiful part of it. There's everything about you is so miraculous, just like everything else in nature and the universe. And if you just explore nature, you see that there's something so divine about it. And so that warm feeling that you got is that, you know, that recognition of your own divinity, you know, probing at you, you know, that source, the creative source that's saying, you know, whether it's God, creator, saying, wait a minute, Donna, you know, there's more to you here. There's more. And it is so tangible when you feel that. And don't you think the more people surrender to the wonder of that, the more we experience it?
Absolutely. And I think it's the fear that holds people back, and it's people's own little conversations that they have with themselves, and they're without interrupted conversations. They're on replay. And I think it's when people are so stuck in fear and so stuck in thoughts that gets in the way of trusting, because there is that, as I said, there's a vulnerability in trusting. And, you know, there's a total difference between, you know, being naive and trusting. And I think if people could understand that difference, you know, it doesn't mean to say if you trust that you just become a fool, but it just means trusting in the right way and trusting the right things. And, you know, as I said, I think it's a perfect thing to say is electricity doesn't exist, or it doesn't, you can't see it. The wind, you can't see it, but you see the effects of it. And even last weekend, I showed a video to a group we're mentoring, and it's available on YouTube. I can't remember the name of it, but it's basically where they hook up a tone generator, and they put just on a metal plate, and they just put grains of sand on this metal plate. I'll send it to you. It's absolutely fascinating. And the metal plate is just neutral, and they put the grains of sand on it, but based on the frequency of the tone that coming through, so the electricity coming through, the sands start to actually create patterns. And based on each frequency, whatever level it's at, and you can see, I mean, you can put it up, it changes the same pattern, you put it down and so on. And the patterns start to become really elaborate. But it's just absolutely incredible to watch. But you can only see the result of it. You can't see the electricity inside it. And I think although it's a kind of a deep, far out conversation, the reality, I think, is a conversation that more people need to have, because I think we're very naive to believe that it's just us, that the world is just all about us.
Right.
And I think it would be certainly for me, and I know certainly for Pat and you guys, that it's been of great benefit and it's probably been one of the most transformational things for me, is to trust that, is to trust the invisible, as you would say, is to trust the energetic force, whatever you want to call it. And when you do, you become more aligned. Things are less scary. You don't feel vulnerable, although there is the vulnerability there, but it's not being vulnerable, if that makes sense. It's powerful.
Well, I can speak only for myself on this, but maybe I'm sure the guys have, but similar experiences. But I have tested this, right? I purposely tested it, where, you know, in yes, in the course in life we've had desperate moments as well, right? And, you know, are feeling that level of pressure, and I kind of say, no, we got to trust it. We got to have a little bit of faith here, and trust that, you know, if I ask of life anything of life, life will give me whatever I ask of it. And, you know, so be careful what you ask for, right? You know, and we often say to people, stop asking for what you don't want and start focusing on what you actually do want. And, you know, when and I think it was Erin Nightingale that said, you know, have faith, but back it up with action, right? And because faith only turns up when action turns up too. So allow yourself to have that level of faith and belief and trust. And then ask yourself again, it's back to asking yourself, now what can I do? Or now what should I do if I was to move towards whatever that ideal would be? Because for me, when I say to use the word tested, whether trust or faith works, it meant I just let go of every other expectation in that moment and say, okay, well, this is the only moment. So if I am to remove the fears and remove the concerns and say to myself, okay, I trust that life will give me anything I ask of it if I have faith in this and I have trust in this. So what do I want to ask of life now? And then if life is going to deliver it to me, then I have to use the tools that it delivers, right? So I have to back it up with action. So, and I have, I mean, we've had a scenario in both myself and Donna's life very early on where I had to ask that question and let go of any fear. And you know what? It was incredible. And I've tested it multiple times, and you know what? It always turns up. The right thing turns up because I stop asking for what I don't want. So when people say, you know what, I hope I won't have a bad day today, be very careful, because guess what you just asked for? That's a positive. Yeah, right. You get it, Mark.
Because we got another podcast to do, but what he's saying is exactly right. We're saying asking lets universe. That's why we're saying exclusively ask positively and go toward the destination of your destiny, not for what you do want, not what you don't want. Perfectly said, Pat.
Yeah, and and here we are sitting in a room, right? And I mean this, Mark. I go back into again the 22nd of August of 2009, right? I believe, and I say this wholeheartedly, we were in a room of somebody who brought greatness into the room, right? Because you see this man on stage. This is you giving everybody a hug, right?
Yeah.
And I will say honestly, because we asked, you showed up. Well, actually, Donna asked, right? And and you showed up, right? But not only that, we put it out to the universe, right? That we're going to have a room full of people, and we're going to fill this room for 3 days, and we're going to deliver exceptional people. And we asked of everybody. Everybody showed up because we.
The ironic thing, though, and I think I said it to you on the last podcast or whatever meeting we were doing. One of the books that my mom used to read to me when I was very ill, and one of the things that she used to read to me, ironically, was Chicken Soup for the Soul. And when I asked you to speak, Mark, I actually at that time I had acknowledged you in the book for something different, and I hadn't actually realized that you were connected. And it's just bizarre the way things have happened, even like when I look back, and whether you just put the intention out there and then people start to come into your lives, or in one way or another. So you actually came into my life totally unexpectedly, but when I look back, it was almost like the seed was planted already.
Well, thank your mom, and thank the law of attraction, and we thank you guys, and please continue on. We apologize that we scheduled something else. This has been so much fun and so deep.
Yeah, and we
have a little
catch up with
visitor
you.
that wants to say he recognizes your voice, so come on in.
Hello, buddy.
That little cutie. He is adorable.
Hi.
He's a best-selling author, by the way. Do you know that?
Yes.
Yeah, he wrote a book in lockdown, and he got an Amazon #1 bestseller. He wrote his own book.
What's the title of your book?
What's the name of your book?
Sad Boy Who Got Help.
He's tired, but it's the sad boy who got help.
Sad Boy Who Got Help. And guess
Tired.
what?
Oh, tired.
Actually, the concept of your book is not to be afraid to ask for help.
It's just.
And that was his own story he came to share.
He said, "Just wait, I'm going to grab it."
He's going to grab it. He's getting the plug, and you will gotta love him.
That's it, yeah. Wait.
But Mark and Chris, we must touch base in the next week or something. I want to put you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for having us on again.
Yes, Pete, thank you. This has been wonderful. Oh, there's the book. Look at the book. Everybody check out that book.
All right.
Sad Boy Who Got Help. Awesome. Well done, Ashton. That's brilliant.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Ask for help.
Good boy.
That's beautiful. I'm so glad you wrote that.
Yeah.
Bless your heart.
And we wrote this book. It's about asking the right questions.
And your mommy and daddy have it.
The bridge from your dreams to your destiny.
So we believe the same stuff.
What a handsome boy.
Awesome.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I apologize, but we got to sign off. Thank you guys.
Super. Cheers to Mark. Thank you so
Talk
much.
to you soon.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you for that. It's it was awesome to have them in, and I suppose going on further from that is
They had to go now.
the power of actually, when you are heard and how you can continue that on, and is it asking more questions, or is it enabling people? What's the sort of, how many questions do you think we are from our truth in general, if you have a feel for that? And what's the most effective way to continue asking?
I think, the simplistic answer to that is we're only one question away, but we may have to ask him 100,000 to find that right one, right? But again, sometimes it's accepting it. It's accepting your truth and accepting who you are. And, and getting a better understanding of who you are. And even for us to keep doing what we do, right? And this is the same for everybody. Sometimes you have to ask a lot of times before you see the proof. So you don't give up after the first or second question. Sometimes it turns up in ways that you least expect it, when you least expect it. And but you got to keep asking. You got to keep digging deep, and you got to keep asking, and you got to ask of yourself first, and then allow yourself to answer, and allow yourself to get involved, and kind of back that trust up with a little bit of action in some way. And I don't know, for some people, if it's their first time on one of these podcasts, this could be the beginning. And and sometimes it's just allowing yourself to really think, yeah, actually, I can ask myself, I can turn up, I can just show up. I can show up. I can walk into the room for the first time. I can sit at the back of the room and not speak to anybody. But asking yourself to allow yourself to be there could be the beginning of those questions. And you might walk out of the room thinking, oh, I didn't get to meet anybody, I'm a bit disappointed. But then turn up the next time and see what happens. You don't stop turning up. You don't stop asking. You got to keep digging deep. And you will be challenged. You will be challenged sometimes. But it's okay. It's always going to be okay. The answer is always there. And it just means sometimes you have to ask a lot of questions before you reach that right question, or at least you get the answer that you want, So I don't know what you think in that, Don, also.
Well, I think it's to ask, but I also think that if it's an important question and you know that the answer to it is going to be important, I think to ask the question in the right circumstance, so to shut out the noise. So, give yourself that time to get the answer. He's asking, can he do something?
Halloween's coming up. I love it. Can I ask?
It's just to give yourself that space where you can, where if there's something bothering you in your environment, it may be a case of taking like a half an hour to go somewhere. It could be a beach, or it could be your own bedroom, or wherever, but just to give yourself physical quiet space to ask if it's an important question, to ask yourself, and you'll get the answer if it's quiet.
And obviously with the book there, Donna, so that from some almost in reverse is potentially negative beliefs to becoming belief. That process, is that a questioning process from your perspective?
I think it's a realization process. Yeah. And I don't say this lightly, but that book is essentially, I mean, I've mentioned a belief or belief before, because I truly, personally, it's something that is hugely important to me. However, when all of your chapters come in, I was looking, there was a thread, a very, very common thread through all of the chapters. And that was, guess what he's going to be when he grows up? They're beautiful, Ashton. Well, on that note, why not play 3?
No, I just said I got 3.
Oh, you got 3, I see.
And I also have another 2 upstairs.
Okay. Well, go in and sit in there for a few minutes.
He's definitely a slattery, yeah.
He's definitely a slattery, is right. So yeah, I mean, the thread, the common thread throughout the whole thing was that you were telling yourselves lies in order to, I'm just going to say to this for a minute. Good. You will write some pieces now for it. So it was creating like that lie with throughout all of your stories. A self-lie. Wait a minute, Ashton.
Making another book.
Okay. Just, you can tell them more about it now in a while. The lie was said right throughout your stories in different ways, but it was that realization that it literally was a realization for each of you, actually, there's more, or actually I don't need to do that anymore, or maybe I should look at it this way, or maybe I should look at that. And it was that gap that I spoke about is in every single one of your stories. And you show so well how people can actually just delve into that gap and get the knowledge out of it. And I think that's why, Belief or Belief is just, it makes sense as a title. And because every one of you have gone from, myself included, have gone from rock bottom right the way up to feeling amazing. And the only difference was we've all changed those little lies.
And that in itself is so powerful, I suppose, is it, I mean, is it a change of perspective? Is it asking the right question? What is that, do you think?
I think what it is like, it's like an interruption. an interruption of something. That could be somebody else's, something someone says. It could be, like in my case, it was, something more, for me, more profound. It could be a word in a book. It could be a phrase that you hear. It could be watching something on TV and somebody says something and you go, oh, actually, as you call it, Pat, like the BFO, you have a realization, actually, maybe there is something bigger for me. Maybe there is something better for me. And then the important thing is that you can have those correct actions and those correct thought processes. And that takes a little bit of development, as we all know. But the beauty of the book is that within the book, it's almost like all the fluff is taken out for the reader and we're given the beautiful nuggets. And really, it saves people a lot of work. It's kind of almost like we give people that gap, so they can take any lies out of their head that aren't useful and that will be keeping them stuck, or obstacles that they can't get through. And to break through those obstacles and break through that adversity, or those beliefs that are holding you down, or as even Krista said, it's a structure that keeps you caged. And it's about breaking free of that. And at the end of the day, we all have life, and when we're born, we're connected to it. We have huge potential. You see Ashton there; he's so excited about everything, and over time that can dwindle for lots of different reasons. And I think the main reason is because we start to tell ourselves lies, things that aren't aligned with life. But thankfully, with the 20 people in the book, and John Boyle from Boyle Sports, I think everyone knows him at this stage, he also wrote the foreword to that book. And he would be of the same opinion. He said, when you change the way you think about yourself, when you change the way you feel about yourself, the conversations that you have in your own head, everything changes. So you become life. And that's why the title, I think, is so fitting for this book. And, we're all proof that it works, so it can't be wrong. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited for people to read it, because I know that conversation, and I've said to you before, and all of the other authors, a book is a conversation. It's not just text. A book is a conversation between the reader, like this here is between the viewer and us. It's a conversation. And therefore, we have to preempt what is it that the reader needs to know. And by each of us giving the nuggets that we've learned, that gap is filled. So I'm super excited about it. I really, really am. Pat, put up the link if anyone, because I know some people are on here may not have heard about it. I can't see everyone who's on, but I can just see the messages. But just put up the link anyway.
I'm kind of struck unintentionally how, obviously, with Mark and Crystal, in terms of ask and that side, and then the actual the be life or belief, how that's that actually magnifies how questions and answers, how you actually take it through. And almost the other circumstance is, there with Ashton's book is saying the sad boy who got help. I mean, that's kind of what happens if you don't, if you are living in negative beliefs, you're not asking the questions, or you're not, able to give answers.
Well, if you look at the number one question a child will ask, why? We continue that process on, why? But as we go through events in life, so why did that happen to me? Or why did they do that? Or why? So we don't stop asking that question. The problem is we ask that same question, but in a structured environment, and it's there's no room for exploration. There's no room for new answers. It's these are the brackets. You got to figure out your why within those brackets. And if you can't, well, tough. So it's about breaking that open. So that when we do ask ourselves, why not? How amazing would it be? Or how can I do that? What would happen if? So they're different questions in a different environment. And it's about creating a new environment as well, which is, that's also really important.
Yeah, that's the key, and that's what I was just about to jump in and say, because that is the key. And as Donna, actually, see, I don't want to give away any spoilers now, right? Because I have been blessed to have read it, because obviously
there's 400 pages. I don't think we could give away any spoilers, to be honest.
Yeah, but well, you'll be surprised, right? But what I will say, something here is, for me, and even to listen to what Donna was saying, and for the people who are listening here and watching here, the importance of understanding this. That when people talk about, and Donna talks about our environmental programming and how your environment can impact, remember, you're part of somebody's environment also. And just to be very careful, one word. And when I say be careful, I mean be careful on positive, right? And be careful on purpose of making sure that you're careful, that you carefully by sharing that one word, that one nugget of information, that one little piece of encouragement that will change your lives. Because when I look back at my life, and it has changed so many times in so many different ways over time. And growing up as a kid, I mean, the thought of getting a job was something that was far beyond our expectation. And that's all I wanted, was to get a job. Now, I didn't even want a home, my own home. I wanted a job. At the time, I would have thought, I would have expected, I'm going to get the council is going to look after me. I'm going to get a council house, right? And I'm going to pay a small rent, but I'm going to get a job if I can. But on that journey, things started to change, and I discovered some things that I was really good at. Now, on the journey of discovering some things I was good at, and then I got the job, and I thought, yeah, I got the job. I'm holding this. I've reached all my goals. And then I ended up buying a house. So I went beyond my expectations, is to actually buy a house and have a job. So things, the expectations change, but the key thing for me was the environment. Even though I was aware of one part of my environment which was not serving me, I was very aware also, and I can look back and say, unconsciously aware of another part of my environment that was pulling me towards being the best version of me. And as I started to grow into different areas of my life, I've been through multiple experiences in life, if you like. In business and in personal life and in another business and another, in multiple different things, that I went through multiple different experiences that I believed when I started in all those experiences was it. And somebody said to me one time, is there anything you regret? And I thought, okay, well, I don't really regret anything. And then I said, well, what would you have loved to have done? I thought, yeah, I was an exceptionally good rugby player, right? And I loved playing rugby. And I do truly believe if times were different back then, and I would have been a professional rugby player. And I look back and I often thought, I could have stayed with rugby, should have stayed with rugby. But then if I did, look at all the opportunity I've missed. Look at the experience I've missed. I also, decided that one time I was going to play the guitar, and I never learned to play the guitar. I have a new one again now, right? And I never learned to play the guitar. And I have a thought, but if I had learned to play the guitar, how different would my life be? Because I love singing, I love playing music, I love singing, I love being involved. So I'd probably be back still in Lanzarote, digging your own bars around Lanzarote for the rest of my life and having fun. But I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing. So we evolve, and everything evolves. And the one thing that just struck me when I was thinking about that book in particular, right? If we look at the average age group of people on that, so we're not going to give away anybody's age, but if we look at the average age group of the 20 people in that book, there's 1,000 years experience. That's what you're getting in that book. Collectively, there are 1,000 years of experience collectively in that book. And that to me is invaluable. That is incredible when I really think of it, because that's how I think of it. And what I've been sharing with you up to now are the different experiences that I got to go through, and how my environment at that time impacted different times and different they were like completely different worlds. So it's like if I have lived in multiple worlds over the last 50 years of my life, that things had changed. My whole world changed. My world, not the streets, not the towns, but my world changed on multiple times. And that came through experience, but also from experience of people I surrounded myself with, who I was learning from, and how they shared that with me, and also allowed me, believed in me the way I believed in myself, and encouraged me, that allowed me to actually dig deeper and ask those deeper questions, and accept the answer, and then back it up with action. That's what you're getting from that book, is 1,000 years of experience in one book. So
well, it's that there's some people in the book, they went to a point of just absolute exhaustion, they just wanted out. Which if you can come back from that and to go on to become happy and successful, like there's no better recipe than, to be able to bring yourself back from the brink. I just personally, I just think it's an absolute incredible read. And I'm not saying that just to sell the book, you know, all the profits go to a charity. So, you know, for us, it's more about getting the message out there, getting the wisdom out there, helping people to understand that there is more, that if they connect to better ideas, to better principles, to better ways of living, and to better thought process, and as Pat said, you know, better environment, there is so much more to life. And to every single person listening or watching this, there is so much more to your life. And sometimes it will even be a case where you realize that you are here for a reason. You do have a purpose. You do have meaning here. And if you can just shut out all the noise and focus on, you know, what is it that you're here for? How can you unfold your life and its true potential? And in order to do that, you have to, you know, as I spoke about that before, that, you know, there's that gap. And in my opinion, and I've written other books, but in my opinion, this collaboration is that gap. It's that wisdom. It's almost like sitting down with 20 people from different age groups, different experiences and backgrounds, different cultures, even different perspectives, different knowledge bases. And it's like sitting in a room with lots of different questions, and you've got 20 panelists there, 20 people to help you, to take you from where you are to where you want to be. Like that it's a powerful, powerful book.
Yeah. And I'm going to jump in, Pete, because I'm going to say something, right, before you go on. Because we've had Mark and Crystal on here, and myself and Donna have been on here for, how long are we now? Almost an hour and a half, right? And we've been talking about both of these books. And I've just come to a realization, and we're grateful for the opportunity to do that and to share it and to share that message, right? But this is the Fire in the Belly 100 episode. This is your celebration now, right? So I think, Donna, it's time for us to turn the tide and let's ask Pete some questions, right? And get Pete's insight to, you know, how it feels to celebrate 100 episodes right now.
Okay, that was slightly unexpected. How does it feel? I kind of have to tell myself to celebrate about it, to be quite. That's me just being honest. But that's I've found myself just total immersion, and that's why I suppose the question of listening versus hearing, asking the right question and then choosing to listen and hear. That's why it just keeps resonating so strongly with me. It's not being heard is something that strikes something in me. It can make me quite emotional when people aren't heard, you know, and it's I'm struck slightly by I believe it's the Samaritans there, you know, when someone rings the Samaritans, for anyone not aware, it's basically a crisis service. But their opening line is, you know, we're here to listen. And I'm struck by that, you know, about how if we don't, as humans, we don't connect, if we don't ask the right questions or take time to listen and to hear somebody, how painful that can be, you know, and the severity of that not happening. So the process of Fire in the Belly is unintended. It sort of grew arms and legs in a way that I didn't know, but I'm very grateful for the way it has. I'm struck by people who are very well spoken, also, who have said it was just a very unusual and cathartic process, you know, and people like, and certainly because I was re-listening to Mark and Crystal's interview this afternoon, and their question set was sort of saying we've not sort of had questions like this before, and there's new questions there. So I think just giving people the time, there's a lot to be said for that, and I think it ties in so well to all this is giving people the time in a non-judgmental space. That's something I think I've unintentionally stumbled across, you know, just giving people the time, asking the right question, waiting for the answer and following up, and just trying to do that. So that's something I'm incredibly grateful for coming across. You know, it's that's the beauty of Fire in the Belly. And I believe as long as you are alive, as long as your heart is beating, I think you have Fire in the Belly, and it's your choice what you do with it, you know. And I think you could be on the brink of suicide, or you could be at the top of your game. I think both people you could point at and say have Fire in the Belly, but they're just at different levels in different places. That's the common thread I've seen. You know, it's how everyone is capable, how cathartic people find it just being allowed and able to talk. You know, because I get a lot of pushback from editing teams to listeners are going, God, they're long, aren't they? And you're like, well, I'm just here to listen. I mean, they take as long as they take. You know, Pat, you've both been on the end of it as well, you know, but that's been my perception of it, and it's gathering speed and pace, and for that I'm extremely grateful. So yeah, I celebrate, and but I kind of feel like my next target is 504 interviews. So similar to the Think and Grow Rich book, I believe, was done out of 504 interviews. So that's the next target. But it's just
505. Step it up a gear. You become the 505 guy.
I don't know who. Well, I've already sort of mentally, I'm saying Bob Proctor, I'm getting him for 504, but I don't know who's going 505 now. You know, I'll have to step it up. But I mean, it's connection, and it's credit to yourselves. You know, you've been extremely generous with your connections, with your time, and for that, it's caught me by surprise. And like I say, genuinely, that's something I'm extremely grateful. I didn't know we're going to get to 100. You know, we're probably going to be at 200 episodes by the first anniversary. You know, that's the weird thing. This has only been going 9 months, really. Yeah. So who knows? But it just excites the hell out of me, to be quite honest. I know I don't always tell my face that, but it is genuinely such a privilege to sit down and have some deep conversations. You know, we do get there's an amount of interviews don't make it to air, and that could be audio quality. It could just be too personal, and it could be just that someone hasn't had a chance to let it all flow out and to just talk. So sometimes, but that's the sort of the show guarantee. We pre-record for a reason and just let people talk. So that's something, again, unintentionally, that has been very useful for people. So don't know if that answers the question, but
well done. And I'm actually going to have a little call to action to the people who are on here right now. For anybody that's on here right now who have heard and listened to any of Pete's, and maybe you've been a guest on his show, jump on the chat box here and send him some love, give him some congratulations, because I think it's important for Pete to allow this to happen. And you know what, Pete, give yourself a pat in the back, right? Because you've done it. And you know, yeah, because you've done it and you put in the effort. And this is exactly what we talk about. You know, when you put it out to the universe delivers, you know, in some strange way sometimes. And the intention of what you had and what you wanted to achieve and what you wanted to make happen, you know, it comes across, screams at me here, actually, the compassion that you have for people, you know, and maybe you didn't realize 10 months ago that it was going to be in the form of podcast, right? But you knew what the message, you knew what your journey was, you knew what you wanted to do, and the universe delivered podcasting, you know. And the difference is you took it on board. You asked yourself that question, will this work for me, and how can I get this message, how can I do it, maybe this is the way to do it. And I remember that conversation. I remember way back in the beginning, and you just go for it. Sure, let's see how it goes.
There
right?
are a lot of people, Pete, who would have had that conversation and didn't do anything with it. As Pat said, you did, you know, that you follow through on it, which is, it's commendable. It really is.
As you were saying, I think yourself, Donna, and I think Crystal was saying as well, you know, that's one thing I've learned, ironically, that the more interviews I do and people go, oh, you know, how much prep time do you do or whatever? It's now I literally turn up with a blank sheet of paper, and Pat knows this. I mean, we do the Wednesday morning chats, and it's, I mean, I adore them. I think it's great. It's, you know, and there's so much I've learned, but the power of actually turning up with a blank sheet of paper is so powerful. Don't get me wrong.
I think there is the wisdom behind it, though. I think that is the difference, that you do have a level of wisdom to be able to ask those questions. And you know, that's a skill that you've developed.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, that's sort of my intention, I suppose. And again, as you were asking earlier, I think it's funny when you look at it. There's a fine. It's not a fine line. There's similar qualities between meditation and depression. And that's just, I don't know why that shot into my head earlier. You know, both are quiet, potentially quiet contemplative states, you know, question asking, you know, but one, you're playing with potentially negative beliefs. You're sort of going negatively at yourself, whereas on the other side is potentially that, you know, you're actively asking yourself, you know, to, I mean, again, unintentionally, we're tying it back to sort of, you know, being life. It's kind of, you know, what's out there for me, as opposed to living in a soup of negative beliefs and I can't do this, I can't do that. So yeah, it's, I think you just ask a question. I think whether it's listening and hearing, I don't know. I think to me, intuitively, I would say hearing is, listening is to take on the words. Hearing is to hear it, both the words, but also the sentiment, the feeling, everything that goes with. And that's, I think that's the sort of thing I'm taking away from it.
Well,
Are you hear?
that's where the connection is made.
Are you hearing what people are saying here right now, Pete, in the chat box?
There's loads going on. Thank you so much. There's loads. It's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for. There's a lot there. Unintended, like I say, I genuinely didn't sort of didn't set off to do this, but it's just I've come across it, and you know, it's so refreshing just to say, listen, I'm happy to let it go where it goes, and for that, it's you know, it's just for that I'm very grateful. You know,
Well,
so much.
He says here, we're all here cheering you on.
Yeah, and I'm going to speak for myself, and I'm sure for other people. I've been honoured, and we're honoured to be here for you to have reached out for particularly the 100th episode. I feel I could have been probably on one of the first as well, right? You know, but I'm really honoured, and I mean that, because this is your forte. This is, you know, this is Fire in the Belly is Pete Longton, and you know, Pete Longton is Fire in the Belly, and that's just resonates so much. And you know, to continue, keep doing what you're doing at the level you're doing at. I mean, when I'm talking about the level, I'm not talking about the numbers. I'm talking about the level you're doing it, the attention that you pay to people, you know, to express what's really important to you, because it's not just another podcast, which means we got 30 minutes, let's capitalize, let's do it. No, it's not. It's very different. It's very true to who you are. You know, so it's, you know, to me, it's no surprise that you've reached 100 episodes, and you will reach thousands, I believe. Thousands. Because you do pay attention. Yeah.
We just passed the 10,000 downloads as well. So it's quite, you know, synchronicity, if you're into it, is there's so much going on, but it's gathering pace. But it's awesome. I mean, again, I just believe, and that's the thing. It's there. My fire in the belly is the fire in the belly. You know, it's the process. It's something I will, you know, probably do the rest of my life. You know, I can see that. You know, like I say, and for that, I'm very grateful.
And for people on here who are listening and watching here tonight, you know, we are all grateful that you guys are here too. But I think tonight we want to show more gratitude to Pete, right? So pick one of your favorite podcasts, pick some, share them out there for him. You know, get more downloads if that's what's going to make a difference to you. So reach out and, you know what, do it together, right? Let's because I truly believe you deserve it. Truly believe it. You know, and the effort you put in is very real. So, you know, Pete is too humble to ask. I'm not, right? You know, dig deep, guys, and it only takes you a couple of minutes. You know the attention that Pete has given to people and what he does and how well he does it. And I think it's, you know, the celebration of him getting to this milestone is, you know what, give him that extra bit of support, that extra bit of a push to get his message out there. So, you know, for everyone that's on here, just, you know, Pete, how can he do it? What, you know, is it you'd like him to do download more and to share them out? What would you like people to do to help you?
I think, listen, the downloads, I think the interaction, and that's where for me it's just taking it to the next level. It is, you know, I'm looking to do, you know, put it out there as well. First of all, if anyone knows Will Smith, Will Smith is on my hit list. So, but just to have powerful conversations, that's the thing, you know, and looking to do it there that, you know, listen, share people's passions, because it is so magnetic and so heavily charged when someone has their passion, and it doesn't matter who or what it is you're talking about. it's finding a way to scale that, and that's, being open. It's kind of, there's only so much time in the day. So how you can scale it and really taking that forward. And just, I think the quality of the interviews and pushing it up that's my sort of call to action. So I mean, I appreciate always any sort of follows and shares, and a lot of people push out, put forward guests and things like that. So for that, I'm always grateful. So it's love and support. I think that's the key thing at this point in time, and thank you for asking.
Well, you give a lot of support to everybody, so I think it will be just deserved for you to get it back too, because this is your 100th episode. We are privileged to be on here, privileged and honored, and to have some great friends like Mark and Crystal to join us here tonight, and that's a testimony to you, Pete.
It's no, like I said, I'm embarrassed and grateful at the same time. And it's probably a message I would say to anyone is, and like I say with yourself, Pat, is, and obviously with Donna, it's the more you ask and just keep asking the question and be like a dog with a bone. You keep going and keep going. I think asking and speaking to, I mean, Mark has been and Crystal have been extremely generous with their contacts, and listen, I'll be humble and say I think it is trying to be respectful with them as well. That's a very key point you put across to me. I remember when sort of the connection was made, Pat, and you said treat it with respect, and that's something I've always tried to do. And I think, but it's the same with everyone. I think if you treat with respect, somebody's episode may or may not go live, and that's, like I said, that's the show promise. I just said, listen, if it's not going to serve you, let's not put it out. It happened for a reason, and that's cool. So it's for that, it's awesome. I mean, if anyone wants to come on the show, please just feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, it's just awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'll raise a glass to you anyway.
Yeah. Well, mine is empty now, but I'll raise the glass.
It doesn't matter. It is half full.
Cheers.
I really sort of one thing I would ask everyone is going in 1 or 2 words. What is your fire in the belly? And I'll start with you, Donna.
Oh God, in 1 or 2 words. Be life.
Is that 1 or 2 words? I don't know.
2. It is 2 words. Be life. Yeah. And I know that you'll get it. Just be life. And if you listen to it and think about it enough, you'll understand it.
What about you, Pat?
You just stole it. But to me, it's life, just life, live life. To put it into 2 words, I mean, there's lots of 2 words we could use for that, right? But it is, to me, it's just, as Donna said, just be life, live.
Thanks to you, that Opus song is stuck in my head, Pat.
Yeah, life is life.
Life is life.
Yeah, that was actually on before Thunderstruck, by the way, just so you know. Right, it's here on my playlist, and because for me it's about, I want to get stuff that gets me up and lifts me up, and so no, that's the wrong one. So
Sonia,
it is. Life is life.
It's a great song.
Yeah.
As Sonia has rightly pointed out, maybe it's be outstanding would be your 2 words.
Oh, hang on, I meant to turn it off now and I've just forwarded. Beg your pardon. I often say to people, put that song on and really listen to it, and I bet you cannot tap your feet. But Sonia said be outstanding. Yeah, well, that's what life is to me, actually. So, it really is. And it doesn't mean that we don't get challenged too. We've said this to people. It doesn't mean we don't have challenges to overcome. But when you choose life, I think you can overcome anything. Whatever that means to you, life will give you whatever you ask of it. But as Donna would say, and choosing your environment and becoming consciously aware of your environment, and because life encompasses everything, and you can have any life you choose, really. But so choose life. There you go. There's my 2 words: is choose life.
Love it. It's true. It's there, and whether it be a podcast, whether it be writing a book, whatever it is that floats your boat, we all have it. We all have a fire in the belly, and it's if you can find that, life's easy.
Absolutely.
So, Pat, Donna, it's been an absolute pleasure. I thank you, and for Mark and Crystal, and yeah, until the next one. It's been outstanding. Thank you so much. 505.
I think you're 505.
No, Donna, you're too late. You're too late. Somebody, let me see here. Somebody come on. I have a feeling is it your nephew, is it?
It's my nephew wants to be Eli. 505. Yeah.
Right, yeah. So
Eli is a 505.
So Eli's 505.
And we'll get Ashton in for 506 then. He'll be,
why not take it to 1,000?
Yeah.
Well, funny you say that. Yeah.
Yeah, but listen, it's not going to end. I think this is going to be a lifetime's work, Pete. I believe this will be a lifetime's work for you, and it's going to evolve into so much more. And you see, for you people who are on here, remember this. Remember that because I promise you, this is going to evolve into so much more. We kind of know it, right? There's a semi-plan, right? Maybe there's an exact plan, but we don't want to let that out of the bag just yet. But this is going to be so much more. This is going to be memorable, and I mean this. There's so much more to what Pete Longton is doing and what's going to come out of Fire in the Belly and where it's going to evolve to. And for people who are on here who are there at the beginning, let me say this to you: we're privileged. And when the time comes, you'll be saying, I was on them in the beginning. I know him, right? And that's going to happen because you're making an incredible difference in the world right now, Pete. Really, truly, you are.
I'm scunder, but thank you. Genuinely. No, listen, all I can say is thank you to everyone. I mean, again, it's without guests and without people coming on and sharing and doing, then it just wouldn't happen, But listen, this, the concept was only really sort of came about 24th of February last year, so it's not even 24. Well, it's what, I can't even do the math, 20 months old, maybe slightly less. We went live 9-10 months ago, and it's just, COVID's actually been quite good for us. I know it's, listen, God forbid that it's not affecting your family, but actually its opportunity is on the doorstep, and it's how you choose to take it on. That's been the key thing. So yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
So we will let people know go back and have their glass of wine now that I got permission from everybody tonight to go and have their glass of wine, right?
I think everyone at the start talking about food and wine and everything else, I think everyone had set the scene. So
yeah.
Awesome. Listen, thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. And until the next one. Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.